And the third one, surviving treacherous rivers and mountains in Nepal. So this should be quite fascinating. The title is New Voices, New Revolutions. We'll just wait for Bharat to come back while you settle in. Kiran, are you the Nepal section? Yes. He's just gone to get some books.
Okay. So let me just say a few.
Yeah, please, yeah.
Okay, while we wait, I might just add that both Olav and Rajan there are old friends of mine. Rajan I got to know in the 1980s when he was a young civil servant. He then went on to become Chief Secretary of Punjab and a very good tennis player, head of the Tennis Association. And Olav I got to know through Prabha Chandran, who's somewhere here also. Now I'll leave it up to Bharat to do the rest. Okay, Bharat, here. Come, Bharat, all yours.
Yeah, I don't know where I left my notes, but nevertheless.
Right here?
Oh, lovely.
Okay.
No, these are not my notes. So anyway, we got half an hour, 30 minutes, 3 speakers. So let's cut to the chase. So I'll not take too much time introducing the speakers because you'll get to know them when they speak. But right off, I'll start with Kiran, and I'll introduce her as someone who's lucky enough to write a legacy of her dad, and her dad read her book. And I'll introduce the other 2 speakers later. So Kiran, tell us a bit about how your dad came to Nepal. And before that, I'd like to also mention that this is the second time we have a speaker from Nepal. The first one, would you remember who she was? Monisha Koirala. And who were here when she was? Raise your hand. Lovely. And now we have Kiran Dip. So Kiran, how did it all begin?
Thank you, Bharat. Good evening to everyone here. My name is Kiran, and I will be talking about the book Road to the Valley. It was never intentional to be the daughter who's writing her father's legacy, but it was a contribution and a new voice that needed to be added to the history of the minority Punchi community of Jammu Kashmir. So this story, The Road to the Valley, is about a Punchi refugee Sikh who travels from the valleys of Kashmir in the year 1959, looking for new opportunities, because the turmoil in Jammu Kashmir creates a havoc not only for the Sikh community, but for everyone. He takes that opportunity to now seek not only new opportunities for himself, but as a Sikh. And jo sadi kenden seva karni hai apni community waste. So us waste he moved and he looked for new opportunities, first in India, and from there he moved to Nepal. The Road to the Valley is a story about how he created paths in places there were no paths. I will continue. Yeah. Just give me 1 second.
Cut to the chase.
I am coming to the chase. So, how did he reach Nepal? When he started his journey on the 23rd of January 1959, he started with this vision that he would be able to conquer new mountains. But when he reached Patna, there he found the first roadblock, or rather would I say, the river block. And the river block was the Ganga River. And Utte, when he saw this river, there were no bridges. So how was he going to bring this massive 1,500 kg truck across. He thought for a couple of days. And he couldn't think about how could he cross that river. And there he saw some boats bobbing on the riverfront. He asked the boatwala, can we tie these boats up? And this person looked up in shock and said, can it be done? It's never been done. Ganga is a fast river which flows very fast. They tied up 3 boats, put a 1,500 kg full Tata truck on top of those 3 boats and took it across Ganga River. It flowed, and 3 days later, they reached Muzaffarpur on those boats. But the journey wasn't ended over there because, again, there were no roads. The next obstacle that they found was when they reached another river. How were they going to cross it? At that time, my father again came up with an innovative idea where he saw that the only way to cross those rivers was by putting those trucks on the railway tracks. How can you put a truck on top of a railway track? He put steel flanks, got the mistris to put the field planks on top of these trucks, and once again, we're able to cross those rail tracks and cross it. Why is this story important? Well, today you can go from Patna to Kathmandu in less than 14 hours. In those days, it took them over 20 days to cross those rivers. Mountains were crossed, paths were created, and that's the story of Roads to the Valley.
Thank you so much. And so what happened after that? How many trucks and how many Sikhs did you bring as drivers?
So it started with 3 trucks. And with that, over a period of over 50 years, close to 10,000 Sikhs from Jammu Kashmir, all Punchis from the refugee community were brought to Nepal, given better livelihood. So an entrepreneur can contribute and help the community flourish when you have the intention of seva in your heart.
So Sardar Pritam Singh is almost 90 years old. I had the privilege of meeting him in Kathmandu. How is he remembered today?
So today, Sardar Pritam Singh. So this story started off with me documenting just over COVID stories about my father because we were separated, living in Malaysia. But I thought I knew my father until I found out I didn't know him. These undocumented stories of people, politicians, people who worked for him, his drivers, people who have served with him and served along with him, have shared their stories, and they say कि नेपाल में एक राजा तो है, पर हमारा राजा सरदार प्रीतम सिंह है. So this is a story about a man who did nothing but to serve his community and continue the tradition of what was given to him by his Sikh gurus to keep doing seva.
And I must say, Kiran lives the legacy of a dad. So like daughter, like father. May every father have a daughter like Kiran. Thank you. Olav, may I come to you, Olav? So Olav is a trained lawyer, but that's not what he does as a profession. He is known for his work in conflict management. And within conflict management is, what was it, kidnapping? What is that other word you said?
Kidnapping.
Kidnapping survival.
Kidnapping survival. So how did you end up from being a lawyer to doing conflict management workshops and kidnapping survival?
Yeah, hi everyone. I'll be quick on that one because I would like to talk a little about my book and what I'm saying there. But I came into this because I once wrote a book for the Norwegian Army on conflict management in peace operations. And they asked me, can you also do a chapter on kidnapping survival? So that was the beginning. But as far as my book is concerned, the introduction in the program says that surviving kidnappers is a mind game. And yes, to some extent that's correct, but it's not a two-way thing. The mind game is what you play as a victim. provided you have knowledge of certain basic psychological aspects and tools that you can apply. So that's one of the main reasons I wrote
Olav,
this
Olav,
book.
can you speak to the mic a bit nearer?
So that is one of the...
Yeah, just bring it nearer to your lips.
Can you hear me now?
Yeah, better.
Right, okay. So that is one of the main reasons I wrote this book, because very few know about them, these psychological tools that you can use. And I've been given a chance to give you a tiny little slice of what I've been writing about. And this relates to what you can call role expectations.
Role expectation, yes.
I will give you a little quiz. In 2008, a renowned journalist named David Rode was taken by Taliban in Afghanistan and brought across the border to Pakistan, to the border areas where he was kept for 7 months. But when he was captured, he had, not long before that, he had been through UN security training. So he had certain ideas as to what to do in such a situation. So what he did was that he started crying, and he showed them his ring because he was newly married. And I would like to pose that question to you. Do you think that had a positive or negative effect on the kidnappers?
Positive, they say.
Positive. Okay, I'll get back to it.
Olav, Olav. Olav, speak here, Olav.
Okay, okay.
No, when you speak to a kidnapper, you speak like this, but to the audience like this.
All right, okay. So I'll get back to that. Question 2. The same year, a UN special representative named Robert Fowler, together with his UN colleague Louis Gay, were captured by Al-Qaeda in Maghreb, in Niger, and taken to Mali, where they were kept for several months. Now, these two gentlemen disagreed on how they were to relate to the kidnappers. Louis Gay believed that one should show submission, show them that you were sad, timid, obviously with the idea of spurring some kind of compassion. Whereas Robert Fowler believed the opposite. He believed they should be upright, staunch, proud. Now, what do you believe was correct in that regard? Louis Gay or Robert Fowler? Upright. Okay, that's evidently correct. The upright. Because what happened later was that the kidnappers decided that they would kill one of the victims. It didn't happen, but surprise, surprise, the victim they chose was Louis Gay, the man who had taken on the submissive, scared, timid attitude. And going back to David Rode, the correct answer is that it was dead stupid to do what he did. If you behave like a victim, you should expect to be treated like a victim. That is a role you must try to move out of, be it in the assault situation or as a captive. So there are a number of techniques to do that, which I cannot go into due to the time constraint. But I can say a little about the kidnapper's role, because he poses a threat to you. That is his role. And you have to do your best to get him out of that role too. Now, sadly, very few victims have no clue about what to do.
Exactly.
And I plowed through huge amounts of literature written by kidnapped victims. They all write books when they are released. They haven't read my book, so they don't know any of the mechanisms or the tools they can use.
So I'll make a pitch for the book. Any of us could be potentially be kidnapped, but if you read that book, there are beautiful survival tips. But Olav, could you mention about the Cambodia thing?
I'm getting to that now. I've only found one example of a victim that was smart enough to move the role of the kidnapper, if you like. In 1971, a social anthropologist named Francois Bizot was taken by Khmer Rouge and kept in the jungle. And as you will know, it was as good as impossible to escape alive were you taken by the Khmer Rouge. And worse, the captor of Francois Bizot was a man named Douche, who was known as Khmer Rouge's worst torturer. So his vocation was to torture and kill people. Now, Francois Bizot managed to escape. He was released alive. And how on earth could he do that? He was the only foreigner who managed to do so, who escaped the captivity with Khmer Rouge alive. He played on an expectation that this man Douche couldn't stand for. He said, "I put my fate squarely in his hands." I said, "Who are going to believe me?" Because they thought he was a spy. "Who is going to believe me if you don't?" So he put heavy expectations on it. "You are my savior. I trust you. You are going to get me free someday." And that worked. It ended up with this Khmer Rouge's worst torturer defending Francois Bizot vis-à-vis other senior members of Khmer Rouge who wanted to kill him. This is just a tiny little piece, but the technique is you have to change your own role to the extent you can, using psychological means that are available. You have to try to influence the role of the kidnapper with other tools which are also available once you take time to get into them.
So it's often said that it's quite easy to negotiate with the kidnapper if you can get into their minds, because they are human beings like us. And have you heard of the Stockholm Syndrome? Yep, but for the benefit of those who don't know, could you quickly tell us a bit about the Stockholm Syndrome?
Yeah, I guess you might know that the Stockholm Syndrome...
Again, speak here.
I guess you might know that the Stockholm Syndrome is about the sympathy that victims sometimes develop for the kidnapper. So they develop a close relationship, sometimes so close that the victims ending up siding with the kidnappers versus those who come to rescue them. And this is a psychological mechanisms that there have been a lot has been written about it. But I cannot go into everything about that, the science that has developed. But there are a number of trainers who contend that this is fine. If you get close to the kidnapper, that enhances your chances of surviving. And I have been a little appalled to read that, because it is correct. It can enhance your chances of survival if you get close to the kidnapper. But it comes with serious risks, particularly if you are a group of victims. In 2009, I think it was, a ship called Marida Margarita was taken in Somalia by the pirates. And an Indian officer that attended a training in kidnapping survival I did once in India, he told me that the officers on board had told the kidnappers a lie about the amount of oil that was on board the ship, because they needed to be sure that they had enough oil to run the mechanisms, to run the equipment, lights, whatever, on board as long as they were captives, and they needed oil to be sure they could get out once their ordeals were over. However, some of the crew had developed a very close relationship with the kidnappers. the Stockholm Syndrome in action, if you like. And they told the kidnappers that these officers are lying. There's much more oil than what they have told you. And by the way, the ship owner is very rich, so you should demand a much higher ransom than what you had claimed. And the consequence was that these officers were severely tortured by the kidnappers. Another thing is that you don't want to come out of captivity with changed sets of values. You want to be the same person. So my advice when training people is that, yes, get close to the kidnappers, but keep in mind that this is something you are doing to survive. It's your mind game, it's nothing else. And please revisit your values from time to time. Make sure that you remain you and not come out as a different person.
So at some point, we'll get you on a phone to the Gaza Strip and help the Israelis out. Thank you. Normally, I would recommend you buy his book, but in this case, I would not recommend that you buy his book. Olav, why?
There's one thing I need to say. Yesterday, I discovered a small disaster about my book. The publisher has made a mistake and skewed the page numbers, so the index is wrong, the cross-references are wrong. If you should still be interested in reading this book, there are a small number of copies available in the shop, but that you have to be aware of.
All right, thank you. Just don't buy it. We'll give you the reasons later. All right. Mr. Rajan Kashyap is the youngest IAS officer ever. At the age of 21, he joined the IAS and reached the highest echelon of the Indian Civil Service or Indian Administrative Service as the Chief Secretary of Punjab. So 2 quick questions, sir, because we just rang that ice cream bell we heard. So the first one was, you know, when you got posted as Assistant Commissioner, I think, you had a relationship with Gyani Zail Singh, which was quite cold and you didn't do well. And later when, a few years later, the relationship became very warm. So my question to you is, who's responsible for that relationship?
I would say squarely, I myself. This book speaks about how IAS officers, they don't have as adventurous and as sensational happenings as my colleagues here have spoken.
Sir, nearer,
but there is some excitement even behind the drab doors of officialdom. So here, what I've tried to show is it's not a list of achievements, it's the human side of the civil servants, bureaucrats who are considered dull, drab, and just like they call them the brushers of noblemen's clothes. The politician, the chief minister is in the limelight, the bureaucrat is at the background. All the time he's busy how to get around the chief minister, and the way each benefits from the other and each spoils the other. That's subject. So I would say that my first brush with the chief minister, he was not a chief minister, he was just a leader of the political party. Someone introduced me at lunch and he said, no, I was yet to take charge. He said, well, there's a lot of flooding in the area of Anandpur Sahib, which is very close to Ropar, close to here. You must go immediately. I said, who's this fellow to tell me I don't know him? I said, yes, sir, let me take charge and I'll do it immediately after I have taken charge. Now he would have said that this man is too big for his boots. This was a blunder. Instead of making a friend, I created an enemy of a possible friend and someone, a benefactor, who rose to be the President of India. So at the slightest opportunity, he transferred me out of Ropar, which was, I mean, it's a lesson.
So was a lesson learned?
It was a lesson. The lesson learned was that you must have tact. But
Correct.
you know, tact you can't have unless you're born with. So throughout his career, you have some brush with authority. You said I was the youngest. Yes, I was. I got in just by one day. Had I been one day younger, I would not have been able to take the exam. But that doesn't mean that I was at the top position. I got the position of Chief Secretary only for 3 months.
No, so wait, let me ask you that question.
For 7 years, every Chief Secretary was junior to me. Now our Lieutenant General is here. He would know that if it happens in the army, you immediately resign. In civil service, you don't do that. You have to live with it.
So I have a question. I have a question. You were a Chief Secretary of the Punjab state for 3 months. Could you do anything in 3 months?
Well, 3 months was enough to tell them what's to be done and what's not to be done. Of course, advice is never welcome, and those who need it most, they take it the least. But, well, one could say that you hold your head high, even if you haven't got the top position for long, you're not sitting at the head of the table, but you are getting the same salary as everybody else. And so I think it teaches us, the title of the book is Beyond the Trappings of Office. So most people say they see the civil service as the person with a flag with bodyguards around him and, you know, a lot of sycophants. No, these are the trappings of office. Unfortunately, they become a trap for the civil servants if they begin to think that the flag is the one that's not getting them the salute. It is their personal achievements. It isn't so. And I found that when in service, whether it is judges or whether it is officers or politicians, everyone wants a red light on top of their car.
All right, thank you, Mr.
Yes,
Rajan. You know, I realize when you're sitting up here, time passes very fast. So before the double bell rings, I'm going to give you a chance to connect the dots. So if you look at the theme of this panel session is New Revolution and New Voices. So I'm going to start with you again, Kiran. Why would someone read your book and how would it contribute to the new revolution and new voices? And the same question applies to both of you. So you got a minute to think.
He's always putting me on the spot. Okay, I'll give you 2 compelling reasons to buy this book. First of all, New Voice is me sharing an old voice of my father. But more than that, it is adding to the history of Jammu Kashmir, adding to the history, undocumented stories, human stories of Punchi refugee Sikhs who have contributed to the economic development of Nepal. And my second reason to urge you to buy this book is that every book that is being sold, 100% of these book profits are going to be helping a child get education. Because I'm working with a charity, in fact I have a charity, it's called Give Back to Community. That's the lesson that I've learned. Give Back to Community is serving underprivileged children, and with each book sold, we are helping one child get digital education in rural India.
Digital education in rural India. She digitizes to humanize.
Thank you so much.
Sir.
Yeah, revolution is a big word. But what I'm trying to do in all my writing is to lift social psychology into conflict management and also into kidnapping survival in ways that have not been done before. And doing so, I've been surprised by the reactions I've got from social psychologists, because scientists often get stuck in theory and they don't see the links to practice. So I find myself facing reactions like, oh, really? That's interesting. My belief is that science should be for practical use to the extent possible. So that's why I've written this book, try to give people simple tools they can understand, tools they can use. And it's not only about kidnapping. It's about how we influence each other. So it's about something we all should know about, actually.
Does it work at home with spouse?
Sorry?
Does it work with your spouse? Have you tried it with your spouse? Have you tried it with Prabha, those things? Okay, jokes apart. Dr. Rajan, Mr. Rajan.
If you don't mind, since I'm the last speaker.
Sure, please. Please. Thank you.
Well, the book would be of interest. Everyone's a critic.
Sir, speak to the mic.
Everyone's a critic. A child, whether book is interesting, jolly, slow, whatever. So it tries to keep people's feet on the ground. And you should not be taken in by the sycophancy around you. The greatest danger is that people who are in position of power think they are very strong.
Right.
Now, since this is the last session, and I'm the last speaker on the last session, I would like to read a few lines which I wrote for the great Khushwant Singh, in whose memory the festival is being held, and about the festival itself. It is a half-a-minute poem which you might relate to. I'll read it slowly, and perhaps you would all be able to sort of relate to it. It's called A Giant Lives On, a tribute to Khushwant Singh. 'Twas once upon a merry time in lonely ancient cottage quaint, amidst tall, prickly, verdant pine, dwelt a disheveled, gentle giant. You know whom I'm talking of. From mounts of books, his stately home, he gazed on vales and hills without. For years he toiled, this dear old gnome, till long last his lights faded out. His distant disciples galore, all of us here, who himself might never have seen. Every year, a vast tribe growing more and more meets here as pilgrims to his shady shrine. Leaders of many a hue came first, poets, players from, and soldiers from abroad and close to home. Friends and foes, too, on the scene soon burst. Free thinkers, most important, free thinkers in the giant's radiance shone. Together, all do take a vow, the giant's spirit to follow right. Countenance, no unfairness now or hence, along his path so bright. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So a big round of applause to my fellow speakers. The reason to make a point in 30 minutes is easy. To make a point in less than 10 minutes is very difficult. And I apologize for being crude and being all that, so I hope you'll buy me a drink later. Thank you so much. A big hand. I'm sorry, I don't think we have time for questions. Is there time for questions? No, I'm sorry, we don't have. But plenty of time for questions later, not formally. So Rahul, can we all go down, and may I also request Rahul to do the closing address, word of thanks. But Rahul, give us a minute to settle down first.
Okay. Does that mic work or not? It does. It does.